Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is the one and only Rob Coombes. Coombesy is an old mate of mine, an old, I guess, ex-colleague. We worked together a little bit together in my time at BMS in the UK many years ago now. Coombsy's still with BMS in the UK. Bit of a veteran now in the recruitment world for them. I know he's had a lot of success and he's very sort of highly regarded in the team over there, and he's doing some great things. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with him today, picking his brains about current state of the market, what he's been up to, his career journey, how he's got to where he has today, and just having a bit of a catch up with an old mate as well. So, Coombsy, with that introduction, welcome to the show, mate. How are you getting on?
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thanks ever so much for inviting me, mate. And great to catch you up. Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really good indeed. Enjoying this Ashes fever at the moment. It's all in the balance over here. I imagine some late nights for you guys watching it, but yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff, mate. So I want to start, sort of in the present.
Mm.
This year so far, 2023. If we're talking work, we're talking recruitment. How have you been getting on? How have you been finding? Have you been finding the market? How have you been performing? How's it all going, sort of as we speak?
Absolutely. I'll answer that question with a calendar year. Our financial year starts in April, but I think if I give it that 6 month period, should I say, from January, it's been there's been a fair shift in the market over here. This time of year, kind of June, July, August, you never know which one's going to be the one that kicks you in the caboodles from a holidays perspective. That was definitely June and coming into July. The end of the boom time. A lot of people have been talking about the boom time of the last couple of years, kind of finished in the calendar Q1 of this year, so January through to March over here. And life started to tighten up in April, May, and June. And, there was a lot of chat on LinkedIn, on the news and things about, the job figure and the amount of vacancies coming down in the UK. But actually, we've still got more open vacancies in Blighty than we did pre-pandemic, and we've still got a workforce that's smaller than it was pre-pandemic due to some other social economic factors like early retirements and illnesses and all this kind of carry on. And Brexit to an extent, but probably not too much. But yeah, from a sales perspective, sales recruitment, which is very much where we specialise, same as you, mate, of course. It's one of the hardest to recruit for sectors and still understaffed sectors in the UK. Yeah, I think KPMG was saying around, it's one of the fourth or fifth hardest skill sets to recruit at the moment. So there's still a great number of vacancies out there. So we're still super busy. But active candidates on the market is where the real challenge is. So it's been that shift from quite easy in one regard to recruit in the last 2 years to now becoming a lot tighter regarding candidate market.
So the candidate, and we were talking a little bit before we even started this. The main challenge is finding candidates.
Mm.
What are your clients saying to you at the moment? Why are they coming to you? Why are they saying, Rob, I need a bit of help at the moment? Is it finding the right skill set? Is it just attracting volumes of candidates? Is it managing the process? How are you helping your customers right now?
Yeah, so my role is the same as yours, ultimately in BMS's technical markets across construction, engineering, manufacturing, those kind of sectors. And in the UK, you touched on skill sets there. We are still being bitten in the backside from a skill shortage when it comes to technical people. What I mean by that is qualified engineering backgrounds with commercial elements to them, so sales engineers effectively. And I got clients coming to us and me obviously canvassing them, and their challenges have been around finding people that have that level of skill and experience within whatever that mechanical, electronic or electrical engineering sector, or it might be because they've lost somebody due to a ridiculous offer elsewhere, but they weren't even looking, they've been poached or what have you. So most of the time companies are losing people to their competitors, and those competitors have gaps in their team because they're still catching up from the changes we went through in the pandemic. So sales teams becoming smaller, the new ways of working. Instead of having 15 guys and girls on the road, they might only have 7 now, bigger areas. As a result, they've got back to parity where they were a year, 2 years ago in terms of revenue. Think, oh, we can capitalize on this now. We need to regrow our sales teams. Hold on, we haven't got anybody. There's no one on the active market, so we're going to have to poach them from elsewhere. And then that cycle begins. So yeah, there's a lack of qualified, in inverted commas, talent if you're looking purely based on the CV, which of course we don't. But if you're looking for a sales engineer, must have an engineering background or what have you, they're the kind of roles that are really hard to recruit for right now. As well as those people that have certain route to market skill sets as well. I'm struggling at the moment, for example, with the house building sector. I've got a client that has been looking for a number of months for somebody in the Midlands of the UK that has a national and independent house builder route to market background, and they are like hen's teeth at the moment. So there's a few different variables out there.
Yeah, gotcha. So you mentioned about the poaching from competitors. Is that what your companies are asking you to do right now, or are you sort of working with them on alternative strategies to find people?
Definitely the latter, Joe. I mean,
Yeah.
across our industry, this is probably a global piece rather than just a UK piece, but a lot of different technologies and strategies have needed to be invested in order to attack that passive candidate market. So what I mean by that is those people that aren't actively looking, that are not clicking on LinkedIn jobs, that are not on Indeed or Total Jobs or Monster or whatever it might be. Those that are quite seemingly happy or, in what they're doing at the moment and don't know that there's other companies out there looking for their skill sets. So, as an organization, what we've done over the last 30 years is contingency recruitment. But in the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've very much got different offerings now whereby it's more of a premium level service for those harder to fill vacancies, not just heads of sales and sales directors, but could be area sales or key accounts or national account managers with certain skill sets that need that more targeted approach. So we've invested a lot into our partnership with LinkedIn, for example, within Recruiter and Insights tools, of course, you're au fait with, but also lead generation software that a lot of businesses will use for getting clients, such as Cognism, Zoom Info is another one. But we use it from a candidate perspective as well, in order to target those people. And also the video platforms, such as our partnership with a business called Interview. So in order to bring this solution together, we're able to then go into that 70-80% of the talent pool market that is passive and look to be selective and try and understand the drivers for people wanting to move or why they are potentially not valued where they are at the moment, if that makes sense.
That's what I always think. Like our main value is to our clients is I call it like creating a candidate. You're creating that candidate that aren't necessarily actively applying for the job boards, that aren't the sort of same old candidates that are on the back office side. It's that those candidates that they don't know that they exist. And I think probably I imagine what you've done there, with those tools, and because you've been doing it so long, your sort of name in the market, your brand that you've probably built for yourself, candidates come to you, or individuals, contacts come to you for whatever. It could be market insights, it could be a new job, and they're the sort of that high quality individual which could be a little bit of a hidden gem that you can then put on one of your clients' table and go, boom, here's someone. Is that how you're filling roles right now, would you say? Obviously, every case is different. But
yeah, of course. That has absolutely been something, and a lot of people call it outside the box thinking. A lot of recruiters listening to this will probably think, well, come on, we've been doing that for years and years and years, and you should be. And a lot of people, it's a fine art, that is, Joe. A lot of businesses in our game, we hear some bad, experiences that clients have had whereby they just get constantly thrown CVs just to try and tempt them into a bit of business, and they might not necessarily be the right fit. We're at the other end of that spectrum whereby I'll only ever do that when I'm fully understanding and ingrained in a business that I'm working with, in a client. because ultimately I know what their company culture is like from a human being perspective, where their business aims are for the next 1 to 5 years, and also therefore what skill sets and type of sales professional they may or may not need at any one point. And yeah, they might not be actively recruiting in that sphere or that geography at any one point, but then if I'm picking up the phone to that client, say, hi, Mr. Mrs. Client, knowing your business as I do, we've actually met this person recently from your sector, or this, that, and the other. We both know they're like hen's teeth. Where are you up to on your journey as a business at the moment? How open are you to a conversation? Conversely, when they are proactively looking to recruit a role and that individual isn't available on the active market, then ultimately, yeah, we do need to tune it up a bit and go to that next level of service, and then bring in the big guns of those tech platforms to try and find those people. So there's a blended approach, like you say, for different requirements. And they're like buses, aren't they? We all know this. We could be working on a role for weeks or months. A company could be hiring for weeks or months on their own. Next thing you know, they put that role to bed. They've got over the fact that they can't recruit. Next thing you know, 3 people just arrive. So it's about having your finger on the pulse all the time, utilizing the new ways of working, tech stacks and things like that, and making sure you're identifying those hard to find people and making them available to your client base at the time when they might need them the most.
Love it, mate. I want to talk a little about you mentioned your client base there, your customers you work with and have probably for years. You mentioned when at the start of the process you really like to go and do an in-depth, fact find, really understand the business from everything from culture, performance, etc. Are you relatively selective now in terms of then the clients that you work with, as in you have like an ideal sort of customer profile, and you're not going to stray? I think a lot of recruiters, the mistake they made is they sort of take on any old business that they think, just to maybe hit a number or whatever. Is that maybe, because I think that was definitely a turning point for me where I was like, right, I know who I want to work with, I know who I don't want to work with. I'm going to laser focus in on that. Was that been part of your strategy over the years?
Absolutely. I mean, my role now as a market development manager, which I've been doing for just over a year, is exactly that, Joey. It's identifying BMS Performance's target profile customer within the technical division. What does that look like in terms of sector, size of business, how they recruit, their openness on recruitment partnerships rather than those transactional relationships of just filling any vacancy or working on any vacancy. And obviously repeat business. It's getting a set of clients that is going to be repeat business, but right business. And I think a lot of organizations since the pandemic had to, not just in our game of recruitment, across the board, really think about who and they're working with and ultimately why, and where that time, effort versus risk, especially in contingency recruitment, comes in. So absolutely, we have walked away from a lot of the market, not that we were working with, should I say, that we were potentially trying to target on a bit of a slapdash approach that our competitors are working in, because it doesn't suit our service or solution offering. And there's no point us trying to impart that solution or service offering on businesses that don't want or need it. And as a result, now we do have, and we feel like we've got a very strong client base that, has repeat relationships with, where I'd say over 50% of the time we are the sole supplier on, because of that working relationship. And that's across sales, marketing and engineering as well. Don't get me wrong though, within new business development, which is now highest on the agenda, because of the economic situation that the world finds itself in, then we're not still going back to that slapdash approach. It's continuing on the journey of targeting the right organizations and still being very selective with those that we have a conversation with. Think, oh, okay, brilliant. In 2015, I'd have probably slapped this role on and cracked on to see if we could do something. But that's not adding value to them or us. So it might be that I'm super honest with them and say, sounds like a great role, but we aren't the right organization to support you because, and that is building so much credibility in the market right now, and giving them alternatives as to how to maybe go about it. It is helping a lot of businesses, obviously not helping our bottom line, but it's making sure that then we can focus on the right customer base elsewhere.
Can be hard though, right? Turning over business,
Oh,
especially.
especially if you're struggling on a Thursday or a Friday, you go back into that 2015,
Yeah,
16 mindset. But where I've developed as a sales professional, as a recruiter, in the last few years, is having that ability to identify good and bad business, or right, whatever term you want to put on it. And what I have prided myself on a lot in the last 3 years, especially, is walking away from a lot of businesses where traditionally I'd have put it on, which
yeah,
has meant my efficiencies have come down immeasurably. And as a result, my revenue's gone up a hell of a lot, and therefore my placements have gone up a hell of a lot. And then, like you said before, that candidates come into BMS because they want us to steward their career. There's a lot more of those success stories happening because it's not just, oh, you're on the market, are you? Here's 8 different vacancies for you to go
yeah,
to, like recruitment was when me and you joined it. It's very much more that consultative process now.
yeah. That identifying the right companies when I work with it's something. It does take experience. I think you just need to have the
Yeah.
so you need to put the reps in. You need to put on the jobs and work with companies that okay, that's probably not someone I want to work with. You can just almost, it's like a smell and a feel to it. Like, yes, I can
Yeah.
taste that's good, but then that one not so much.
Well, I touched on culture before, and that for me, growing up in, BMS, this is my 10th year now, understanding what our company culture was, is now, and is continuing to evolve into, and what have you. It's about aligning ourselves with businesses that have similar values and share those kind of things. And what I have found is those businesses that are maybe do things differently, or are a little bit, for want of a better phrase, wide, are those that we've ended up, removing ourselves from because they're very transactional based relationships, they're not on that same level. And I've come to realize that, and come to terms and really understand our company culture. It's helped me to then develop our market strategies for our BDMs and BDEs to go to certain sectors and try and target them, and then get that information back from them to say, right, well, what are their company cultures? What are their feelings? How do they like to do business? Right, the ones that aren't going to fit us, they can go over there. The ones that we build really good relationships with.
So, how much of the new role then, your role personally, you
Yeah.
mentioned about the advising the other, the guys,
Mm.
junior guys at BMS, which companies to go at, that kind of stuff. How much of that has been this new role, and how are you enjoying that part of the
Yeah,
business?
absolutely. I mean, if you're going to put a percentage split on it, in an ideal world, it's an 80-20. 80% I'm doing my senior
Yeah,
national account management job, 20% doing that. The reality is that obviously fluctuates on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on, where the BDMs, BDs are at. If we've got a new starter on, which I have at the moment, training, developing, onboarding, coaching, directing, it's taking a lot more time, which is fantastic. Because ultimately, then I know that time invested now is gonna lead to great things later down the line. And that's where that skill set for me has come in the last few years, of identifying the right and wrong business, because then I can make sure that really helps in that time management piece. The role that I've been doing for over 12 months now, it's been fantastic, and it's really worked well for the bigger picture for BMS, as I say, with efficiencies coming down, with growing the division, technical division as we have. My colleague Sam, he does my role in our medical division as well. And as you'll probably remember from years gone by, the medical division at BMS was quite small in the context of the UK business, and now it's pretty much on parity with technical, because of the work that Sam and I have done to identify those businesses, get it to where it needs to be. And we're now the market leader in medical sales recruitment, as well as one of the major players in the UK of technical sales recruitment. So it's been really rewarding, and obviously helping people come in that may not have got a recruitment background, like me and you when we came in, and coming through, that's a really rewarding aspect of the job as well.
yeah, 100%. Like we've touched upon sort of what you're doing at the moment. We've talked about the market.
Yeah.
Had a bit of recruitment chat. I want to talk about you a bit more personally. You mentioned it before, coming up 10 years with BMS. How do you sort of reflect on your time, your journey, so to speak, from when you started nearly 10 years ago to where you are now? How can you sort of sum it up?
What a question. I think the best way to sum it up is it's been a major evolution, and that's not just me as a human being, 'cause definitely the case. Um, from where I was 10 years ago, man-child effectively, coming into the big bad world post-army, looking into, building a career in B2B sales, kind of getting into recruitment off the back of a BMS assessment day back then when they were trying to get me out to organizations such as Shreddit, etc., as a field sales executive, and I ended up actually taking the role at BMS. And the evolution is very much in the recruitment world, and the way we do it, and the way it's seen, and the way the service is offered. Back in 2014 when I first started, it was a very volume based piece, which still works for some organizations. Back then, doing what we're doing now didn't exist. And the idea of doing a meeting on Skype, as it was back then, gosh, you remember Skype, was just never thought of. Everything was done on not even a mobile. It was done on the landline, and you sat in the office and you made 140 calls a day, and you spoke to however many decision makers, and you put the hard yards in. And I wouldn't trade that in for the world. That is one thing I actually miss in an archaic dinosaur fashion, because what that enabled me to do, and you probably, not speaking for you, but probably testament to this as well, that upbringing in that kind of 2010s environment gave us the grounding of hard work and perseverance and being told to F off every other call and whatever it was, that then got us to a point where we go, right, well, we've got all that behind us. Now, how do we turn that into a consultative, thought-provoked, a value add proposition? And that has then led itself into this position I'm in now, in the market that we're in after this big boom period, after a major downturn in COVID. And now we're back to a trading situation that is normal. Like, this is what we did in 2014, 15, 16. These conditions are normal. But a lot of people that have joined the industry in the last 2 years thought that was normal.
Yeah.
So I think having this nearly a decade in recruitment, in sales recruitment, in BMS performance, has set me up in such a way that I can share that knowledge with people now and say, look, this isn't bad. Don't get annoyed or depressed that you've had a bad week. This is normal. And these are the skill sets that make top performers. These are the experience that make top performers. And hopefully, in the next 10 years and with this organization, I can look back on this period like I did in 2014 and it just evolves again. So yeah, change, I think, is the thing that really underpins my experience in this business.
Have you sort of surpassed what you hoped to achieve? I know I can't imagine 10 years ago you could even imagine you still would be at BMS 10 years ago, but like you must have had some sort of hopes and dreams. You must be way ahead of that. I think you must be proud of what you've done, I guess.
Oh mate, it's off the scale. Back then, I think as a wet behind the ears 22-year-old, however old I was, 23-year-old, I always thought that your trajectory was, on the phones, be good at what you do, and then become a manager. Done. That's life. And every business some businesses have still got that quite flat structure, but it got to a point very quickly where I realized, hold on 2 seconds, like we work for an SME. Therefore, there's a lot of dynamism in that. It can change. You buggered off to Australia. I was like, Jesus, right, okay, so anything is actually possible here. We people that moved to Ireland. We had people that moved into consultancy. We had a national accounts division formed, marketing formed, engineering kicked on. Our sales training division absolutely grew, and our graduate division grew exponentially. And I'm just thinking, right, well, I'm not pigeonholed now. And as a result, I kept quite an open mind throughout my career. Every one-to-one, managers, directors saying, right, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Because they were quite open with me and said that we see you here or want you to go into the right direction, and therefore have supported me, trained me, give me everything I could possibly want to get to where I want. And got to a point, 18 months ago, whereby the business went, right, well, there's an opportunity actually for us to segment our divisions even further with a view to them growing and create this position of market development manager. 10 years ago, I wouldn't expect to be doing this senior business development role, strategic BD role with coaching and developing, responsibility alongside, as well as being a senior national account manager, as well as being the top performing sales professional in the business in our division for the last 2 years on the bounce. No. Did I think that? No. Did I echoes like?
Yeah.
I thought I'd just have a nice steady career, and it's absolutely cracked on. And I think my experience in this business, I want to share with not just people within my organization, not even just within recruitment, within any B2B sales or marketing function. You can genuinely do what the hell you want if you want it enough, and if you create the conditions for that success. And that comes down to, again, what I said before about behaviors, processes, these kind of things, and mindset. And
That was
yeah,
just what I was going
there's
to
no
ask you.
ceiling.
I was just going to ask you then. So, for you to achieve what you've done, if someone's listening to this, say one of your new starters or someone just started in recruitment, 22 years old, they're listening to us, waffle on. Like how, what, I know it's not easy to always articulate, but the sort of the mindset that you've developed, the things you've done, how would that person get from where they are now, starting out, to where you've sort of what you've done in the last 10 years? What would your advice be?
Yeah, so I think when I reflect on why I have been successful, it's always because I have had some form of life goal or, not, or some sort of target. 9 times out of 10, the financial aspect is the means to the end to get to that goal. And that's always evolved throughout that 10 years. So I've used the word evolution quite a lot in this podcast. And it's because I've evolved as a human being, which means my career's evolved. And as certain things have kicked into my life, means that my priorities change. So 2014, it was making sure I could afford my rent in Manchester city centre. I could spend all my money getting absolutely what's it did at the weekend with the lads and what have you, going to gigs, going to the villa, playing loads of cricket. That was my little bubble, right? But then very quickly after that, so that's what we all do post graduation when we get into these things. It's to fund the lifestyle. Very quickly after that, though, I met my now wife, and priorities did start to change. So things like holidays started to happen or needed to happen with her, but also Ashes tour to Melbourne and Sydney needed paying for as well in 2017-18. So those things ultimately fundamentally drove me. And then after that, in terms of my life, engagement, kids, house, wedding, all of these things underpinned and punctuated what my goals were. And then to work back from that goal, it's a case of, right, what do I need to do from a KPI perspective? And I boiled this mathematics down to how many calls per day I needed to do in order to hit the financial reward needed to then be able to do those things. And that's where this process and mindset comes in. So I will look at my bonus calculator. I will work out what revenue I need to do in a quarter to do that. Right. So from that quarterly revenue, how many placements is that? Right. So with those placements, how many jobs do I need to make sure that I secure in order to do that? Right, but how many candidates do I need to get into those jobs to secure those placements? Right, well, we've got that. How many conversations do I need to have with hiring managers or decision makers in order to secure those jobs? And how many phone calls and pieces of outreach did that make me do? I will go back all the way to that granular, keep that process, and nothing's changed in 10 years, Joe. It's exactly the same. And that's where that level of success has come from. And where my biggest piece of advice to my new start Charlotte is get into a rhythm, get into a process, stick to it, and do not let yourself take the foot off the gas, because then you will always be forever playing catch up. And then that's the biggest piece of advice I could give to anyone starting out in recruitment.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've always had, you mentioned there's like a goal attached to it, but an overarching sort of why to why you're doing
Bang on.
what you're doing.
If you don't have a why, you're in the wrong job. He's being quite black and white about it.
Yeah, yeah. and then you've kind of reversed. You've got the why, then you've reversed engineered it down to, as you say, how many calls do I need to make in that morning to put it all together.
And that's where it is, because if you keep looking at the big goal and the big picture, you will actually lose focus and sight of the direction of travel. Because if something goes against you, you have a candidate pull out. I've just done a podcast with BMS about counter offers. Jesus, that's kicked us in the caboodles the last few weeks and months. But if you let the highs become super high and the lows really get you down, and you don't find this middle ground, you will lose that focus. So by reverse engineering the end goal, it means that I can time block. It means that I can have small little goals, improve them by 1%, which means that, a bit like, I suppose, like a bullet hole, the end piece will be much bigger. So you just got to keep that thought process and focus.
That's definitely something I've found. Like, as my career's gone, it's like, I celebrate the wins probably less now than I used to. But I also, when the losses, when something goes wrong or whatever, you lose something, I managed to brush that up much more quicker than I used to. It's just, I don't know. I just this sort of level, as you say, that.
Yeah, I think with the experience, that comes with experience, because a lot of the time, another skill set that I've really developed in the last 2 or 3 years, especially, is because I've been so good at picking this good and bad business and understanding these processes and getting involved in it a lot more. You get to see the pitfalls a lot sooner than I did back in 2015, 16, 17. I can see the red flags. I can project business a lot better. I can understand, right, does this candidate really want my job, or do they have 2 or 3 other things in there? And, if my company come in and offer them, are they actually going to take it? Is it actually the right opportunity for them? So I'm not, whereas back in the day, I'd have got really upset about losing that. Now it's a case of, well, I need to do something else now to mitigate that aspect happening. And because I can identify that, I think my emotional intelligence has evolved and improved a hell of a lot. And that's why I'm trying to find that middle ground of highs and lows.
But then, if we just talk about like a new starter, so someone just starting out like we were, you kind of still want them to make those mistakes, because you know how valuable they were to yourself and how much you learn. You kind of, I don't know. I always say, like, we always advise anyone who starts with us. I always say, I want you to fail as much as possible. I want you to fail, but I want you to fail as quickly as possible. Fail and fail fast, so we can learn. And you can, because you're going to make a ton of mistakes. So rather you go in head first, make the mistake, learn from it, move on, rather than sort of tiptoe around it. Don't pick up the phone or whatever. That's how it seems like. Your mindset's probably the same, aren't they?
Oh, 100%. And that's why I used the word process before, because I'm going to sound like Mikel Arteta now at Arsenal, like, you have to trust your process, because otherwise, if you become scared of picking up the phone, scared of making a mistake, start trying to do a load of cold outreach on an email, which we all know doesn't work, you will fail, and you won't learn, and you won't get that resilience and what have you. So you're absolutely right. I know it's a great piece of advice, that, Joe. Is, I like that phrase. I'm definitely going to steal it. Fail and fail fast, because then ultimately, we only, as human beings, we only get better as people by learning, don't we? And the best way in any business to business sales environment is to learn by doing. Otherwise, you can read all the theory, you can look at all the whiteboards in the world, have all the classroom training, but until you're in the trenches, you'll never learn, will you?
I want to talk a little bit about BMS now as a company. So obviously, we've both had long tenures with the business, stuck around through ups and downs. What has made you? And for me, like, I'm not embarrassed to admit, like, it's been a massive part of my life. Working for this company. I imagine the same for you. What has made you sort of stick around and keep working for BMS over ups and downs? Through the years. What is it about BMS that you love, I guess?
Yeah, I think I touched on the word culture before. It's definitely that, and these ups and downs, they go both ways, and ultimately we've got a culture of recognition and looking after people, ultimately, that look after the business. And they gave me an opportunity after my original direction of travel as a career didn't quite go to plan in the British Army. And ultimately, all the way through my journey with them and this business, they've given me everything that I could possibly need in terms of that development, that encouragement, that training, and opportunity to succeed, and the environment to succeed. As a result, I'm paying that back, and then by paying that back, ultimately, and becoming a top performer. Can't lie, financially, it's working out quite well at the moment. But also in the dark times, like in furlough and in the pandemic, etc. I was looked on as one of those few to come back and ultimately save the business and bring it. When I say save it, I don't want to put myself in knight in shining armor, but one of the few senior heads that were brought back and trusted. Sorry, I think the better word is entrusted to get into that absolute quagmire of whatever market was left and rebuild. And now we're here, in July 23, absolutely flying, different culture, different way of doing things. We're a completely different organization to the way we were. And it actually feels like I'm working for a new business. And I think it's that evolution of the organization that's kept it fresh as well, Joe, to answer your question. A lot of people that come to us looking for a new role, it's like, so what is your reasons for leaving? Oh, well, I feel stagnated. I've been here for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. It's the same job. There's a ceiling. There's no this, there's no that. Here, there's no ceiling. There is, you create opportunity for yourself. We're very entrepreneurial like that. And as I say, like yourself, you were able to build a life in a completely different country because the business supported you. Yeah. And, I've been able to do what I wanted to in life because the business has supported me. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons that I'm still here thriving and wouldn't dream of going anywhere else.
You mentioned the word you were entrusted to come back, and that was where I was going to go with my next question, or my next point about, for me personally, the reason I've stuck around for so long, I think the trust has, I know it's a bit of a buzzword around, organizations when they're looking to hire or whatever, that trust between, hiring managers or, and employees, it has to be, I've always had at BMS, it's that two-way street whereby, as you say, there's, they've for me personally, it sounds like yourself as well, that there's been that, platform to, you come to me with an idea, no problem, run with it, go with it. I'm giving you the license to do it. And at the same, and it's provided me great opportunities for my career, as yourself. But at the same time, I pay it back by working hard. And now it's sort of got to a point where the trust is just there. We don't, there's no, it takes time. It does take time.
Absolutely.
But it's got to the point where, and I think, I don't know, I always think that trust, it's quite a vague concept in a way, but it is massive in terms of relationships within the business.
Oh, 100%. You talked earlier today about a gut feel and the smell and the touch of what a good client relationship looks like. It's exactly the same internally. I could be sat in front of the directors in a meeting, and I know full well that I've got that trust both ways. I also know that trust is something in life that can be lost very quickly. And it's about having that mutual respect, and like you say, the more you put in, the more you'll get out of anything in life. Is kind of the mantra I've always lived by, and it's the same in this environment. And doing what I'm doing as a market development manager now, constantly having open communication with my manager, the sales director, the rest of the board, because it's all for the bigger picture and for the greater good. And as soon as that kind of is lost, then it will all fall down. But that's the main thing that's kept me here. It's because everybody wants to succeed. There isn't this kind of ivory tower. There isn't this, I don't want you to do well because I don't want you to take my job. It's like, no, we all want to be that. And it's a great vibe to be in.
Yeah, it sounds like, I guess, that as you talked about it before, the culture of the business at the moment sounds fantastic, mate. And yeah, it's onto a winner. We've talked about the past. We've talked about what the present. I want to wrap this up by talking about the future. What can I expect from you? And BMS in the UK. What does the future? I know not always easy to answer, but what does the future hold?
I'll get my crystal ball out, shall I?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Look, I think from a UK perspective, we had a bit good news yesterday in regards to inflation coming down. Yes, our inflation, everyone's laughing at our inflation across the globe, but it's coming down. And yeah, we are having a lot of problems at the moment, social economically, when it comes to interest rates, cost of living crisis. I know that everybody is across the globe, but it is, everyone's feeling the pinch. However, me and you joined this organization and joined our professional careers post credit crunch. And you and I heard all the stories from the guys and girls in Coventry, Warrington, and what have you about how bad that was. This is not that. These are actually great conditions to do business in my opinion. Like I mentioned before, I feel that it's like normal. It's 2018-19 kind of territory rather than this madness we've had in the last 2 years. I think short term, it's going to be tough. I do think we're going to have to work harder for vacancies, but more importantly, as I mentioned before, work harder for candidates. And I think then in that medium term, what I mean by that is that 2024, that we're going to have a period of being tested within our resolve and the way that we go about it. But I think with that breeds creativity, different new business strategies, different ways of building relationships, different ways of adding value to our clients. And I think that the recruitment industry, everyone's going on about AI and taking our jobs. No. It's going to enhance what we're able to do as human beings with this new technology in order to help organizations recruit better. Molson Coors in the UK, you guys may or may not have heard about this in the news. They've stopped looking at CVs. They've stopped accepting CVs because they don't want any prejudice or bias about people's educational backgrounds or what they have and haven't done, because they're moving away from this skills-based, CV-based recruitment to soft skills-based recruitment in order to take on the best human beings. And that's what we've done for 32 years, is meet and assess salespeople face-to-face to do that, as well as obviously have the CV. So I think in the medium term, it's going to be a great opportunity, and I'm really excited about it. And I think that a lot of businesses, as soon as they start realizing, skill shortage is still kicking us in the what's it, let's look at what human beings we can take on. Let's forget CV, not forget them, but let's move away from just interviewing a CV. And I think, there's going to be a lot of business to be done, and the recruitment market's going to continue to boom in its own little way.
Love it, mate. And you talked earlier about your own why and your own goals. My last question to you is around the idea of success. To you, Rob Coombes, what does, and this can be personal, professional, which way you like, what does success mean to you?
What a question. I will answer it both personally and professionally, because one is the means to the end. So the professional success for me, now I'm in this new role, it is twofold. It's one, getting our new starters to a place whereby they're self-sufficient, loving life, and not getting the job licked, because that takes a lot of time, but getting to a place very quickly whereby they're happy in their career choice. Off the back of that, then success will mean ultimately still getting to High Achievers Club within BMS for the third year on the bounce. But what does that actually mean? What does that actually mean for me for success? Well, if I do both of those things, that means that me and my wife can move house again. It means we can get our son into the school that he wants to be in. It means that we can do what we want to do as a family moving forward, and ultimately have that security, because they are my number one priority. They are my why, and by doing the professional success pieces, the life success comes after that.
I've actually got one more question I just wanted to ask. Actually, I've just thought about it. You've been with the company a long time, and I know, imagine there'll be a lot of people that have helped and supported you along the way. The role of mentors in the role in recruitment is massive, I think. Who can you shout out that's been or played a massive part in your career development that you might want to give a little thanks to, or a tip of the hat?
How long have you got? Well, look, I think, again, talking about a 10-year career in a place, there's a lot of people. But where I am now doesn't come if the front end isn't right.
Okay.
So, and there's a number of these people that I still work with to this day. So first and foremost, Sean Norcross at BMS Performance. He's given me one of the best pieces of advice in sales I've ever had, which is, price is only a problem in the absence of value. And I've taken that into every single negotiation for the last 9 years. And he's one of our key account directors, or national account directors, should I say, within the business now. Oliver Williams, who's one of the senior leadership team, the sales team at Ecolab now. Ollie was my manager for many, many years, and taught me a hell of a lot of what I know from a cold calling sales pitch piece, and also a lot of life stuff as well. But my technical knowledge and the way that I've approached understanding my market niche and my sector has come really through three key people. David Gay, one of my best friends. He's a B2B sales leader himself and a very successful field sales professional. He was our leading technical consultant when I first joined this business. Me and him go back years playing cricket and what have you together, but he really drove me to understand the technical market. And arguably without him, I wouldn't be a market development manager now, because I just wouldn't have the passion for the sector. David Cooper, who works for BMS Progress within our education business. He was my manager for a number of years within that technical sector, and me and him went to countless client meetings together, and he taught me pretty much everything I needed to know about client meetings. And more recently, my relationship with our lead technical consultant, Tina Vine. She's been in recruitment 20 odd years. She's an oracle. She has been in the technical sector for so long. You know Tina, and she's just a breath of fresh air. And then, of course, I suppose, other people within the business, my boss, Mike Leather, we talked about trust before. He's the one that him and Cordelia Slater-Johnson, probably the two people that have put the most amount of trust in me in the last 3 years, which has ultimately made me thrive. So if it wasn't really for those people professionally, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Coombesy, love it, mate. Thank you very much for joining me today on this chat. I'm going to be listening back to that. I'm going to be burning up some notes. Anyone who just started in recruitment, I highly recommend listening to that conversation, picking out a ton of gems there. I've got to say, the passion, the enthusiasm you have 10 years in is very admirable. I love it. And I think you're doing some great stuff. And I appreciate you coming on, sharing your wisdom, and long may the success for yourself at BMS continue.
Thank you so much.